Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. This is the first of what might be a series of videos breaking down what's being discussed in this conversation that you'll see in the video here between Will Duffy on the left and Wolfie on the right. Wolfie goes by the YouTube name Wolfie6020, and he's a pilot that has been trying to debunk and destroy Flat Earth. And so it seems that this interview was set up to give Wolfie a platform to put across his talking points, and I thought maybe this would be it. This would be the video that converted me from being a flat earther to a globe earth believer again, because we could hear from this authority figure, and maybe he was going to present some tangible proofs that we live on a globe. Unfortunately, though, that didn't happen, but the interview does provide several good talking points that are worth discussing. I mean, it's work that's got to be done, because misinformation and disinformation has been put out there by Will and Wolfie, and so we've got to put things right just by explaining and demonstrating what we see in reality. So in this particular video, I'm going to focus on the claim that the horizon that we see is below eye level when you get at a certain height in an aircraft. And this is a claim that Wolfie has put forward as one of his major defenses against the flat Earth. But first of all, I want to just give a bit of background and context, you see, because what Will Duffy has done since launching his so-called final experiment is create a straw man argument in the first place, where he's pitching the globe or the globe model, namely the kind of the coordinate system and the sunrises and sunsets that we have on this globe model, and comparing that to an azimuthal equidistant projection of the Earth as we know it, and saying that is the flat Earth model that most flat earthers refer to, and that is simply not the case. This itself is a straw man argument, and as far as I'm concerned, personally, I'm only going to speak for myself. Yes, the AE map was put forth as something to consider, as a way of illustrating a flat Earth and how things could work like that, using the same coordinate system that we have in place and has been in place for hundreds or thousands of years. So for me, I got into flat Earth in about 2015, okay? And what immediately struck me, and it's the same thing that struck Wolfie, actually, ironically, is when I first heard Eric Dubay saying that the horizon is always at our eye level. So that was the first video. In fact, it was just an interview I heard. I can't remember the podcast or the channel name, but that was the first thing I heard about flat Earth from Eric Dubay, and that struck me immediately, that the horizon being at eye level is absolutely true for when we make observations in reality. And of course, that goes against the idea that the Earth is this geometric sphere with a horizon that should drop as we gain height above it. That simply doesn't happen. In fact, I remember when I was 16, I was taking my first long-haul flight going from the UK to the US, and I was really excited because I was a space buff. I loved all this stuff. I knew the sizes and the distances of the different planets and what they were made up of. I knew all that stuff. It fascinated me at the time. So I was excited because I thought I would see the curvature of the Earth from up there on this long-haul flight, but I was disappointed that didn't happen. So I was actively looking for it from that young age. It was something that I then realized, well, yeah, the horizon is just there at your eye level anyway. So just from my own experience, I knew that, and it resonated with me when Eric Dubay pointed that aspect of flat Earth out. So as far as I was concerned, the AE map wasn't pivotal. It wasn't a keystone of any kind of flat Earth model. Of course, you do start to think about, well, what could be different? How could you model a flat Earth if it's not a globe? But then you do come to the understanding that the globe model is not something that was ever measured in terms of anyone measuring any curvature on the surface of the Earth. And so the globe model is literally a projection of two hemispheres, and in that sense, nothing changes. I never assumed that because you suddenly realize that you are indeed on a level stationary Earth, that everything changes is wrong, because nothing changes in terms of what we see. So it's often pointed out by people like Wolfie and Will Duffy in this video that flat earthers don't understand these concepts for the globe, whether it's the direction of down and gravity or how it all came about. But we do. And again, there's no disagreement that the coordinate system works to get us from A to B. So when you have these latitudes and longitudes that have been decided over hundreds or thousands of years and they work, it doesn't mean that the Earth is a globe. We just understand that those latitude lines specifically were derived from observations of Polaris, for example, in the sky, assuming that the Polaris is a fixed star above the North Pole, or that's designated as the North Pole. So naturally, as you get further away from that point in the sky, then it will appear to decline and get closer to the horizon. That's just a result of perspective over distance. So for me, it was just a simple case of understanding that the coordinate system that we use, the latitude lines based on observations of Polaris, are just governed by perspective. So we actually have this geometric way of describing how we see the sky above us, creating a hemisphere or a dome of perspective that isn't the actual Earth itself, and this can all be done on a level Earth. It's just that you can see how far away you are from Polaris across the level Earth because you see the star drop. And as far as the height of the star is concerned, or the sun for that matter, above the surface of the Earth, it really doesn't matter. It's not part of any model that's necessary because nothing changes, and the assumed distances of stars, whether it's millions or trillions of miles, is just that. It's a calculation based on a model. But really all we need to understand is that the coordinate system that is used and works is based fundamentally on making these observations. So they're not tangible measurements. Nobody measured any curvature to start with. Nobody found that being in one place on the Earth, it gives you a different relative down or horizontal if you're on another place on this assumed globe Earth. You basically have two hemispheres of perspective based on the stars and creating latitude and then longitude lines based on time, and then putting them together in this globe model. It's nothing to do with the actual shape of the Earth, really. It's, in fact, apart from the Earth being level to start with, and that's what we'd expect to see on a level plane as we get further away from something in the sky. So there's this understanding immediately that all of this has been derived from perspective, and then if you want to describe perspective mathematically, you can use geometry to do that. And so this is where the globe Earth believers misunderstand or misrepresent the so-called flat earther, because they assume that we don't understand this concept of being on a globe and down being towards the center of a spherical Earth. Of course, the concept is easily understood. We've known this since we were kids because that's what we were taught to assume is what's happening. And personally, I was a space buff. I loved all that stuff, so I went along with it. But after that long journey of trying to seek truth and looking at all the other aspects of reality and human behavior and how we can get wildly misdirected sometimes, to me it just makes sense that we have converted what we see happening in the sky into this coordinate system that works. So we have a working model for the globe. I've never disputed that. And so one of the arguments Wolfie likes to try and come up with is that you must then if you want to prove you're flat Earth, then you have to come up with flight plans and distances and directions that adhere to your flat Earth model, rather than a globe. And that's not the case. That's just, again, that's another straw man argument, because there's no disagreement on my part that you can get to a certain destination and it will cover a certain distance based on the coordinate system that's already in place. Again, it's a common misunderstanding that if you have a flat surface and then you create it into this imaginary curve, then the distance across the curve is going to grow, or it's not going to be the same as what's represented on an AE map. But that's just, again, referring to projections and assuming that the wider the distance appears on this projection, the wider the physical distance is. That's not the case either. So you got this misrepresentation of the way maps work, but then from my part, a fundamental understanding that perspective is the imaginary curve, or the geometry used to describe perspective is what has created these two hemispheres that end up being a globe. So when Wolfie or Will Duffy or anyone defending their belief in the globe Earth is trying to tell you that flat earthers believe in this model or map and it doesn't work with the way we actually navigate, they have just created a straw man argument. There's absolutely no contest here as to what actually exists and what can be measured. It's just an understanding that you can calculate things like the radius once you have a certain distance to assume, whether it's an arc distance of your circle or the circumference of your circle. You can reverse engineer these simple mathematical principles to arrive at an assumed radius. Nobody ever measured the radius down to the center of the assumed spherical Earth, and nobody ever measured any horizontal curvature either in the first place. And although you can make predictions, for example, when the sun will rise or set, or when you'll see an eclipse, none of this requires a globe. It is just illustrated in that way with this geometry just describing what we see. So again, nothing changes. You just understand that it is our perception that has been changed from observing everything happening on a level Earth and then perceiving that as a conceptual globe based on observations from the sky, not of any observations of curvature on the Earth or any measurements. So, of course, what I was hoping for in this interview was some actual measurements to show that. This is what we keep trying to get across, is that while it's easily understood how the globe can be a concept, and you have all these other conceptual explanations to go along with it, nothing changes. It's just a different perception for what we actually see. And so in order to prove a globe, really what you actually need is proper measurements, tangible empirical measurements of the curvature, whether that is actually demonstrating or measuring a difference from one direction of down to another. Even if you claim that there's no difference in this down to this, or this down to this down, well, how are you going to measure that? In any science, you would actually measure it. You wouldn't just explain it away as a concept, or that's based on other concepts that isn't based on any actual measurements in the first place, apart from converting degrees of elevation into nautical miles. So again, just understanding that you have nautical miles created or converted from degrees gives you this distance based on degrees, but it's not actually the degrees of a circle which is represented mathematically. It's just the degrees of elevation or declination of Polaris, for example, from the horizon, from our subjective horizon. Yeah. So that's all understood. And so my interactions with Wolfie began, I suppose, when he came onto the scene. I think, as far as I remember, it was maybe around 2016 or something. And in this video, he goes on about being accused of not being a real pilot and things like that. And it was basically, again, you're going to experience all kinds of people. Flat earthers are not of a particular type. They come in all shapes and sizes and all different personalities. They just understood that what I've just explained, that we've been taught a concept based on something that doesn't really measure up to our real tangible reality. And we understand that things can be hidden with maps, and we could be misled to believe that things do or don't exist. And some of these ridiculous arguments that I remember Wolfie coming up with early on were like, oh, you don't believe that Antarctica exists. But no, that's, again, I've never adhered specifically to this idea that Antarctica is an ice wall. I just understood that is a natural result of the projection that's made from the North Pole being designated like that. So that doesn't mean that that's what the flat Earth actually looks like. Who knows? Nobody really knows. All we have are maps and a known area that we can travel to and around, and otherwise the conditions just get too extreme. So this is the thing. We're trying to be scientific. We see that we're on a level stationary Earth, and we can see that navigation and aviation follows these same rules, and there is no change in the direction of down or horizontal. It's constant. So that is what you would expect, and that's what you would predict on a level Earth, that there is no change. So if you're going to go against what we experience, then really what you need to come up with is some kind of measurable proof that there is this change in the direction of down, and it isn't, as we experience it, horizontal level. So anyway, just as far as my interactions with Wolfie go, they've been frequent at first, and it was quite friendly to start with, and I think Wolfie did share some private videos with me, but he was always sticking to this idea of the globe being proven through aviation, because he's a pilot and he knows his stuff, and of course that's what he was taught, and as far as I'm concerned, I understand that. That's fine. That's how you've been taught to understand a working model of the globe. And of course, if you haven't been taught it in that kind of depth, then it actually makes it a lot easier to see things without that. So I understand that when someone sees the globe in this mathematical concept based on the coordinate system, it makes sense and it works. But there's also this understanding that it's just a concept to illustrate this. So, but Wolfie was very hardline about his belief that flight plans and the coordinate system proves the globe. So, in some respects, Wolfie's been kind to me, because he did help me out when I was stuck in the UK during COVID. He helped contribute to getting my flight home to Thailand here. But before then, he'd offered to send solar filters and camera equipment, or pay for flights to go and see that Antarctica really does exist. And as far as I was concerned, in those days, it was like, you got the wrong end of the stick. I mean, any kind of talk about the sun changing size or not changing size is based on presuppositions. It's not something that the flat earther necessarily assumes is going to happen, but we can actually see that being observed. And as far as places existing or not, again, that's not something I've ever disputed. So I never saw a need to accept these gifts, which would always come with some kind of catch as well, like you've got to give up your channel or admit that you're wrong just because I've sent you this equipment to prove you wrong. But yeah, so these things have never really done anything to prove the globe, and so in this conversation that we're going to look at, that's not happened either. So anyway, let's look at what Wolfie says about horizons.
A circumnavigation of the globe. We had flown from Sydney to Christchurch in New Zealand, and then across to Argentina and up to Brazil for the Olympic Games. And it was while we were sitting in Brazil for 3 weeks that I first saw flat earthers on YouTube. And probably wouldn't have given it much thought, except some of the videos were popping up were related to aviation, and everything I saw was completely wrong. So I thought, okay, this is interesting. The first video I saw was from Eric Dubé, and it was talking about the horizon always rising to eye level. Now, in the type of aircraft that I fly, we're at very high altitudes. We go up to 45,000 feet and above, and we're actually trained to identify that the horizon will be below horizontal. It's in the head-up display. It's actually in the flight manual of the aircraft that states this is due to the curvature of the Earth. So I started to think about how I can respond to that, and on the trip back from Brazil we went to Cape Town, Africa, and then we went across to Perth and back to Sydney. And on the trip back I made a number of videos, which are some of the first videos on my channel.
Amazing. So we're going to talk about all these issues during this interview, which I'm really excited about. But the first thing that happened when you started engaging with flat earthers on these issues and you told them that you were a pilot, what was their response?
They immediately thought I was lying. They did not believe that I was a pilot. They wanted proof that I was a pilot. And I got called a liar many, many times. The amount of times that flat earthers would say, "You're not a real pilot, you're a liar, you're an agent." It was just comical. It was like a whole new experience of how people treat you when you talk to them, and it was like complete disbelief, you know. And for me, it was very easy to prove that I was a pilot.
All right, so after that, he's going to go on and talk about all these various flat earthers that claim to be pilots but apparently weren't. But I'm not going to get into that. But it kind of shows you that there is this similar experience, I suppose, that I had as well. The first time I put out a flat earth video when I was just looking into it, and it was about horizons, there was so much hate from people. Yes, there were a few people saying, "Oh, great, okay, nice one," because they were looking into it at the same time. But you got this inpouring of people hating on me. And so, I naively thought at that time that people would accept this and with open arms, and we can just, let's look at reality together, let's explore it, let's experiment it, let's see what the truth actually is. But what you immediately experience is this massive resistance to it. And so, unfortunately, when you're dealing with people's beliefs or something they've become attached to, then yes, you will have animosity, you will have these accusations on either side, all around. I don't like to divide this into sides, but there are sides, I suppose, in this case. And so we do all experience that same thing when we're trying to talk about beliefs. You will have these knee-jerk reactions from people, and okay, so that happens. It happens among flat earthers and globe earth believers, and in many cases we can be as bad as each other. But this doesn't really detract from what we're trying to do here, is to discover the actual truth and see what is we can ascertain between practical reality and beliefs, or true knowledge and beliefs. And so really this whole thing is an exercise in detaching from any beliefs we might have formed and seeing if we can scientifically describe what we're actually seeing or measuring or not when it comes to this globe earth, flat earth debate. So let's now get down to the crux of this particular video, where we are talking about the eye level horizon versus the horizontal line on a heads-up display. And so we'll listen to what Wolfie says about this when he's prompted by Will Duffy. I might stop it here and there, but basically after what Wolfie shows, I've got a few of my own videos to show that refute what Wolfie is saying about the horizon dropping below eye level. So stay tuned for that, but let's just hear what he has to say about it first.
Yeah, let's talk about something which got you into Flat Earth at the very beginning,
Yes.
which was Eric Dubé claiming that the horizon always rises to eye level.
Correct.
Now, interestingly enough, Austin Whitsitt made this same claim to us at dinner when we were in Chile before flying to Antarctica. So this is something that has been stated by flat earthers for a decade now. They're still saying it. Here's what I've seen is that if you go, say, into a hotel and you go to the top floor, the horizon still looks like you're at eye level.
Yes.
But you're really not that high off the ground considering the size of the Earth.
Correct.
Now, a pilot, someone who routinely flies...
Just one of those things to point out there, where you're talking about our relative size and being minuscule on a massive flat Earth, and then not seeing much of a difference even if we do gain some height. Then it's funny how in another breath a globe earther would then say, well, I can see a ship disappearing at the horizon, assuming it's going down a curve just a few kilometers or a few miles in front of me, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 miles in front of me. And they'll say, well, that's evidence of curvature, when really that's just evidence of diffraction and everything that distorts our view when we have a low elevation view across the surface. And so, as we said before, horizons do appear to get further and further away from us the more height we gain above the surface, and that happens when we gain height above a level surface. So when we are down low and there's waves and there's distortion and the surface is moving and rugged, then yeah, it will cut off a ship a few kilometers or a few miles in front of us. But then if we gain height, what we actually see happen to the horizon is that the horizon does rise with us, and the horizon will then appear higher than the boat that we were observing on the surface beforehand. So this is something that anyone can do and see for themselves, that the horizon does indeed rise with our eye level, our height above the ground. And before we get into this, again, it's worth pointing out, before Wolfie kind of tries to say that, oh, you can't really tell where eye level is. We can, because when you look at your surroundings, the horizon actually tells you how high you are in relationship to everything around you. So if there are mountains in the distance and you're higher than those mountains, they will appear below the horizon that you see. But if those mountains are higher than your current elevation, they will appear above your eye level, and they will appear above the horizon that you can see at your eye level. So actually, it's very clear what the horizon does when we see it. It's a survival mechanism for us to help us very clearly and accurately understand the environment around us and where we are in relationship to everything that we see close to us and far away. And that's how we naturally get around the world and understand where to put our feet and where to shoot things and how to grab things. Yeah, this is all stuff that we become accustomed to, understanding how our eyes actually work. And they are, of course, governed by perspective.
At 40 and even 45,000 feet, tell us, does the horizon rise to your eye level up there?
No, it definitely doesn't. And it's actually in our flight manual. It states specifically that the horizon will be below horizontal.
Okay, he said the horizon will be below horizontal. So what he's talking about now is this horizontal line on the heads-up display, and he's conflating that with eye level. Okay, so yes, we're going to see how that happens in the videos that follow this, but here is where Wolfie is intentionally so, I believe, but also backing it with something that is kind of factual to try and come across as telling the truth. But actually the truth is the horizon that we see is an indicator of our individual eye level, and the horizontal line on a heads-up display is not necessarily our eye level, and that is where Wolfie is making this connection that is false to try and prove the point that the horizon that we see should go below eye level, because that's how it's supposed to be on a globe. But we know that in reality that doesn't actually happen. So let's just continue listening to this, and then I'll show you the videos I'm talking about to disprove what Wolfie's actually saying here, or show that it's misdirection, misinformation, or partial truths.
Due to the curvature of the Earth. I can send you a picture of that page of the flight manual. But it's only a small amount, and this is where the confusion comes in. At 45,000 feet, it's only 3.7 degrees down from horizontal, and that's not much. You know, like if I told you to look across at the other side of the hangar and tell me if something is at eye level, if it's a few degrees up or down, you can't see that with your eye. And what I've always considered is that when you're looking at the horizon, it's not that your horizon is rising to eye level, it's that your eye will naturally look at the horizon.
Okay, this is what you'll often hear from globe earth believers, and yes, you have to consider that, because when you have an orthographic view of a globe and someone standing on it, they cannot physically see a horizon in front of them. It would be impossible if they're looking straight ahead. On a globe model, they have to look down to see the edge of that curvature, which is referred to as the horizon. So yes, Wolfie would consider that's what he's seeing. He would say that you naturally look down to the horizon, but as we've already pointed out, the horizon is actually a very accurate indicator of where we are in relation to our surroundings. So, you know, you get this appeal to the arbitrary nature of making observations and then interpreting them without doing any actual measurements. And he mentioned a 3.7 degrees just there as well, which would be what you might expect to see based on the distance that you can see to the horizon on a globe model based on your altitude, but then also that would give you a certain distance that you can see, and then there would be this aspect of angular size, which is actually perspective, but again it's changing it to make this gap appear in the horizon in front of us, or between eye level and the horizon. But again, all Wolfie's done here is make an erroneous, false connection between eye level, the human eye level or a camera's eye level, and this horizontal line on the heads-up display, which we will see is actually engineered and designed to actually correspond to the visual horizon and the pilot's eye level. But when you misalign these things or you don't do it correctly, then you will see a difference between the horizontal line on the HUD and the horizon that we see at our natural eye level. So let's just listen to a bit more of that, and then I'll play those videos.
Okay, and your eyes are not calibrated to measure 1 or 2 degree increments. You know, so if you're in an aeroplane at 35,000 feet and you see the horizon and you look at it, you're going to look at the horizon. You think, well, that looks like my eye level, but in reality, it's a few degrees below. In the aircraft that I operate and the previous one, we have a head-up display, which is a visual depiction of essential flight data, and specifically the pitch attitude of the aircraft, and also the true horizontal line. And I've got videos about this on my channel showing the true horizon line, which is true horizontal. And
so again, you heard him refer to true horizontal or a horizontal line. He's talking about that horizontal green line on the heads-up display, not the actual eye level. So okay, we're going to see these examples and break them down so you understand what's actually being shown in the images.
The Earth horizon is several degrees below. You can actually see it in the pitch scale. It shows you how many degrees below it is.
All right, I've just skipped a bit where Wolfie says that he sees sunlight hitting the ceiling of the cockpit at dawn or at sunrise, and for him that's proof that the Earth is a globe, but there's all sorts of things you can think about there. So I'd rather focus on this claim that the horizon we see is below eye level as you gain altitude. So let's just hear what else he has to say about that before we look at videos debunking that claim.
Now, just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, on the globe, the horizon should drop as you increase in altitude.
Correct.
And so using this instrument in the plane, this this head-up display, this HUD, I'm guessing that when you're on the ground, you see the horizon at one place, and then as you increase altitude, you see that horizon dropping below eye level.
100%. You know, if you're looking at ground level, the HUD horizon line is on the horizon. You know, if you've got a clear view, sometimes at an airport it's not easy when you've got buildings and whatnot, but if you can see a clear horizon, that horizon line will be exactly on the Earth's horizon when you're at ground level. And the higher you go, the gap continues to increase. I have another video on my channel from a different aircraft that shows that from taking off to climb, and you can steadily see the Earth horizon dropping from the HUD horizon line.
Incredible.
Okay, so yeah, you see the horizon apparently dropping from the HUD horizon line. So we're going to see now that the horizon line on the HUD is not what flat earthers refer to as eye level. And so this claim is false, and we're going to see why. So when we talk about an eye level horizon, what we mean is we're talking about the horizon that we subjectively see through our individual eye level. Wherever our eyes are is where we will see a horizon. So if you're looking through a camera, you'll see the horizon in the center of the camera's field of view, as long as that camera is pointing in a horizontal direction. That's just the way we see the world around us. And for each individual observer, their horizon will be subjective. They each see a horizon at their own eye level, but of course it will depend on their own height or eye level compared to the environment around them. So someone higher than me or lower than me will still see the same horizon, and it will be in the center of their field of view. But of course the relationship between their eye level and their horizon and everything around them will not be the same as mine. So you apply that to when you're looking through a heads-up display. So what I've done here is just put some symbols that we'd see on a heads-up display on this piece of perspex here. So you can imagine me being a pilot looking through this heads-up display at the horizon beyond. All right, so we've just got a couple of elements to talk about here. We've got these vertical lines here, and we might see the altitude indicated here, and then we've got these pitch lines here, +5, and then down here -5. So then we have the water line or the bore sight, which as far as I understand is fixed because that shows us the direction that the aircraft is pointing. So it's designed to represent that and be in line with the direction that the aircraft's pointing. And so we can see that this water line is above the horizontal line on the heads-up display. But whether or not I will see a horizon above or below this horizontal line on the heads-up display really depends on where my eye level is, my subjective eye level, compared to whatever's on the screen in front of me. Okay, so obviously if it's like this, then my eye level is below the horizontal line on the heads-up display. And of course if it's like this, then my eye level is higher than the horizontal line on the heads-up display, in which case I would see a horizon in the distance that is higher than the horizon line on the heads-up display. And likewise here, my subjective horizon will be lower than the horizontal line on the heads-up display. So it's wrong and misleading to refer to this horizontal line as eye level. However, we do know that the horizontal line on the heads-up display is usually supposed to be in line with the pilot's eye level, because the pilot puts their own eye level at the same height as the design eye reference point in the cockpit, and that derp is in line with the horizon line on the heads-up display. So if my eyes are in line with the derp, they will also be in line with the horizontal line on the heads-up display, and I would assume I would see a horizon in front of me at the same level. But if my eyes or the camera is below that horizontal line or above it, then of course that will change where we see the horizon appear to be in relation to the heads-up display. So that's how you can just create this misalignment, just by adjusting the actual eye level. Let's start with this article by the Government of Canada, titled Design Eye Reference Point in Light Aircraft. And you can see that the acronym for Design Eye Reference Point is DERP, D-E-R-P. And down here it goes on to explain what that is. First, it's important to know that every aircraft has a DERP built in by aircraft engineers. In transport category aircraft, it's readily available information. The pilot adjusts his or her seat up, down and fore, aft until the alignment balls match. So it's talking about these balls fixed to the cockpit, and that's where the pilot should have his or her eye level. And then it goes on to say here that when sitting in the correct DERP, the pilot has the best view of both the instruments and the outside world. According to the SAE Dictionary of Aerospace Engineering, the design eye position is defined as a point fixed in relation to the aircraft structure, at which the midpoint of the pilot's eyes should be located. And then it goes on to talk about being comfortable too. So that's what these are. And this is intrinsically linked or related to the way the heads-up display is designed and what the pilot will see through it. In this document, head-mounted and head-up display glossary, which is basically a glossary of terms used when designing heads-up displays, we can see that the DERP is mentioned here as being intrinsic to the design of what we see in a heads-up display. It says here design eye reference position, or DERP, also see eye reference point, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And it goes on to say here, design eye position is the point specified by the airframe manufacturer from which the pilot can view cockpit instrumentation, have adequate external view, and can reach cockpit controls. The term design eye position refers to a point in the cockpit designated by the airframe manufacturer. And compare that to eye reference point, which is down here. And it says that the eye reference point, ERP, is the spatial position of the observer's eye relative to the optical axis designated by the HUD manufacturer. The term eye reference point refers to a point used in defining HUD optical performance, sometimes called design eye reference point. And then it goes to tell us to compare that with what we looked at just now. Okay, so you can see that there is this link here. Those DERP points, or the reference points in the cockpit, are related to the instrumentation, and we can do some further reading here in this design guide for head-up displays for fixed wing aircraft. And down here in the general section it tells us that these displays will be used for aircraft control, hence it is essential that the symbols shown on the HUD be appropriate for flying the aircraft and be compatible with real-world clues. And then I go to page 11 and it tells us about the horizon line here. In the heads-up display is a reference symbol shown on the HUD which represents zero pitch, or the local horizontal, or the location of the real-world horizon. And then we've got this blurb here about the fixed aircraft reference, or theta, the fixed aircraft reference symbol, which represents an extension of the fuselage reference line or other longitudinal aircraft reference line. The symbol indicates relative pitch and roll angle of the aircraft when compared to the horizon, either artificial or real world, or to a displayed pitch ladder. It is sometimes called the water line. Okay, but that's important here. The horizon line is a reference symbol that is congruent with the real world horizon, which it goes on to talk about here. On page 41, pitch scaling considerations. If compressed pitch scaling is used to assist in unusual attitude recognition or for use in acrobatic flight, it will not be possible for the various HUD symbols to all be conformal. The common choices in compressed pitch scale used are to have the aircraft pitch symbol waterline remain fixed in the HUD field of view, to have the horizon symbol remain conformal with the real world horizon or zero pitch angle, or to have the velocity vector symbol remain conformal with the true velocity vector. All right, so for most applications, it is recommended that the HUD horizon remain conformal with the real world horizon, and that is done, as we've seen, by the pilot aligning his or her eyes with the derp in the cockpit, and then that would mean that the horizontal line on the heads-up display will then be aligned with the pilot's eye level, because the pilot's eye level is in line with the derp in the cockpit. If the pilot's eye level is not aligned with the derp in the cockpit, then it will not be aligned with the horizontal line on the heads-up display. So we can basically ascertain from this that, okay, the horizontal line on a heads-up display is designed to be in line with the derp in the cockpit, and so the pilot must also align his or her eyes with that point in the cockpit in order for the horizontal line in the heads-up display to be in line with that, and in which case the external horizon will be congruent with the horizontal line, because everything is lined up. The pilot's eyes are aligned with the derp, and the horizontal line in the heads-up display is aligned with the derp as well. But if any of those things are misaligned, then the horizontal line in the heads-up display will not be at the pilot's eye level. In this screenshot of a video taken by Wolfie looking through the heads-up display while the aircraft is on the ground, we can see that the horizontal line on the heads-up display, although it's quite faint, does line up with the visual horizon for the observer or for the camera. And this line here, it's a guideline. If I bring it down to exactly the halfway point, we can see that that lines up with what we could call the observer's eye level, because if we assume the camera is horizontal looking straight ahead, the eye level in this field of view will be exactly in the center of the field of view or the image. If the camera is pointing up or down, then that would just be a line of sight. It wouldn't be directly pointing at eye level. And so in this case, the horizon is naturally at eye level, and the horizontal line is also at eye level. And that is because on the right hand side you can see here one of the balls that is the DERP or derp, the design eye reference point, which we know was put in by the aircraft designers, and the heads-up display was designed to align with this, and therefore align with the pilot's eye level. So in this case, the camera is at the appropriate eye level that the pilot would be when they look through the heads-up display, and they do indeed see a horizontal line that is in line with the natural horizon in front of them, which would be at the observer's eye level, as we all know. And if I'll just highlight that with another line there, and I can get rid of the guideline. Okay, you can see this purple line here goes straight across there, and it lines up with that derp on the right hand side there. In this screenshot of another video taken by Wolfie while he's flying, so obviously at a high altitude, we can see that things do not quite line up the same way they did when on the ground. We can see here from this horizontal guideline, that's where the center of the field of view is for this particular image. So in that sense it would appear to be pointing down slightly, and that is below the horizon. So even if you called this eye level, which it isn't, it's just the line of sight, but if it was eye level, we would still see a horizon outside the window that is higher than the camera's eye level. But in fact, because this is pointing down, we know that that would make the horizon rise from the center of the field of view. So, of course, over here, we can see that the horizontal line of the on the heads-up display is higher than the visible horizon, but it is also in line with the derp in the cockpit. And so we know from the overall perspective of this image that the camera, or the center of the camera's field of view, is not in line with the derp. It's below the derp. So in that case, this horizon line on the heads-up display will of course appear higher because it is set to be at the same level as the derp on the right hand side here. Now there will be a little bit of difference in perspective, so the derp is further away from the camera than the horizontal line on the heads-up display, so that would change things if they were they were a little bit closer together. But essentially, you can see there that the horizontal line does pretty much align with the derp. But in this case, the pilot's eye level, or the camera's eye level, is not as high as the derp, and so that would make the horizontal line on the heads-up display appear higher than the horizon, and higher, further still, than the camera's actual line of sight, because it's not pointing at the camera's horizontal eye level in this case. This screenshot further illustrates how the horizontal line on the heads-up display can be made to appear above the visible horizon outside of the aircraft by simply changing the perspective of the camera. So if the camera is not aligned with the derp and it's not pointing in a horizontal eye level direction, then nothing will actually line up. So I've got these three guidelines here. This lower one is the center of the field of view, but I'll get rid of these so you can see things more clearly. And I've got a red line here showing the horizontal line of the derp on the right hand side, and you can see that in this case that appears to us to be higher than the horizontal line on the heads-up display. Let me just show that. Yeah, okay. And then down here, this cross here, let me just take off this yellow cross is the center of the field of view, so we can see which direction the camera's actually pointing. Yeah, but we know this is the halfway level, so we know that in this case the camera, or the camera's line of sight, or its eye level, is not as high as the derp here. So we are not aligned with the derp, and so the horizon is not aligned with it, nor is the horizontal line on the heads-up display aligned with the camera's eye level at this stage. Now this is just a shot as the camera is panning around the cockpit, but it's one where you can see how the alignment of the derp and the horizontal line on the heads-up display is not appearing to be the same, and nor is the horizontal line of the horizon outside the aircraft, because the camera is pointing up and it is lower than the derp level. This screenshot is from one of the videos Wolfie likes to use to show that the visible horizon outside the aircraft appears to drop below horizontal. Now, when he says horizontal, he's conflating that with eye level, but he's talking about the horizontal line on the heads-up display, which we can see is indeed higher than the visual horizon. But there's a few things to take into consideration here. Let's first look at where the derp would be with this red line. We can't see the derp in this image, but based on the other images, it's about the level of this part of the heads-up display up here. So we can see that the derp level is much higher than our actual eye level, or the center of our field of view. So I've got this yellow cross here showing which direction the camera's pointing, so that's right in the center of the field of view here. So you can see that it's not pointing, and it is not as high as the derp level. And in this case, the horizontal line on the heads-up display is even lower than the derp level. And that's because the camera itself is lower than both of those things. So this horizontal line on the heads-up display is not in line with the derp, and it is not in line with the camera's eye level either. So again, what we see here is this perspective being forced, as it were, simply by changing the orientation or the direction or the actual height or level of the camera itself in relationship to everything else that is supposed to line up with the pilot's eye level when they are actually flying. And just one other thing to point out with this image is that we see which direction the aircraft is pointing from this symbol here. So we can see that it is pointing up from horizontal, so it's pitched up. There's the 5-degree marker there, so it's creeping towards that. And so that would also make a difference to the direction that the camera is pointing, and whether we are lined up with that or level with that. All these things contribute to what we'll see in the overall image. And this one is one of my favorites for actually proving what flat earthers say is true, that the horizon always appears at our eye level. And although this is a shot from a video which I think Wolfie was trying to show that the horizon is below horizontal, which is the case, this again is deceptive, because this horizontal line on the heads-up display is not a representation of eye level, and it is not physically at the eye level of the camera. The camera's eye level is actually below that which we can see from this cross in the center there, and we are pointing directly at the horizon. So that pretty much tells us that this is a horizontal shot of the view outside, and the horizon is at our eye level. It has nothing to do with this horizontal line up here. Nothing at all. That's not what we're observing directly in front of us. So the horizontal line on the heads-up display is not eye level. But of course, in this case, because our eye level is lower than that horizontal line physically, the horizon that we see in front of us will be below this horizontal line, but in line with our eye level at 45,000 feet, no less. And we can see it's pitched up slightly, not as much as in the previous shot, a couple of degrees there from horizontal. And again, that's what these elements on the heads-up display are representing. They're not always going to totally align with the pilot's eye level or the camera's eye level, unless the camera or the pilot's eyes are in line with the derp on the cockpit. But let's also consider the point made that the horizontal line on the heads-up display will appear higher than the visual horizon, because the heads-up display is programmed to be aligned with the derp and the pilot's eye level. So let's assume that the horizontal line on the heads-up display, when at ground level, is programmed to be in line with the pilot's eye level and in line with the derp. Then as the navigation system knows that it's gaining altitude, perhaps the horizontal line in the heads-up display is programmed to rise above the derp or the pilot's eye level as the aircraft gains altitude. We know that visually the horizon will always be at our eye level no matter how high we go, but we know that the heads-up display is programmed to have things lined up in a certain way, so it could also incorporate the programming that actually rises the horizon line on the heads-up display above the pilot's eye level, and so this would make the horizontal line on the heads-up display appear to be higher than the horizon, but it would also be higher than our eye level. So this would be something that you would see in the heads-up display, but it doesn't fit with what we actually see outside, because it's simply programmed to do that, to show a horizontal line that goes above the pilot's eye level as the aircraft gains altitude. And just for kicks, let's look at this screenshot that Wolfie likes to use as his proof that he sees horizontal curvature when he's flying at 46,000 feet, as you can clearly see here. But again, even though the horizontal line on the heads-up display is higher than the horizon, so you can make the claim that the horizon has appeared to drop below horizontal, not eye level, we can see that actually even at 46,000 feet, right in the center of the field of view, the camera's actual eye level, we see an eye level horizon. Okay, so while Wolfie's trying to prove curvature in this, he's actually again proven that the horizon is at our eye level, or appears to be at our eye level, at 46,000 feet. And this is taken, I presume, around dawn or dusk, I'm not sure, maybe dawn. So in this case, we see what would appear to be curvature, which is funny really, because it's obviously very dark there, and it's the light, the way the light is coming up over the horizon, that is creating this effect. And again, all you have to do is imagine taking another 3 shots, each 90 degrees perpendicular to the other, so you get this all-round view. And so what would you expect to see then if you have this horizon curving like this in front of you? Then if you turned to the right and took another photograph out of the window to stitch these two together, then you should see that curve continue. But then if you took a picture out of the right and you saw this bulge in the middle, and then you took out the back and saw another bulge in the middle, you've got this kind of petal effect as you take these different photographs. So if you're going to assume that this is curvature in front of you, then any subsequent shots taken around you should then curve off following this line of curvature. But we know that that's not what happens in reality. In fact, Wolfie pointed out that we see this kind of ring around us, and yes, gaining height allows us to see further because there are less obstacles in the way. And when we're very high up, then of course the clouds beneath us become the surface that appears to rise up to our eye level, which again is perfectly positioned right in the center of this camera. So we can see that this was shot pretty much at a horizontal line of sight, and it shows us an eye level horizon, regardless of what's going on in the heads-up display. Again, this horizontal line in the heads-up display might have been physically programmed to move up from the pilot's eye level to indicate the height or the altitude that it knows. And again, we can see that we're still pitched up from horizontal there. Yeah, but just because of what we see on this display, it doesn't have to conform with what we are seeing in front of us. And again, it just goes to prove that the horizon is at our eye level, no matter how high we go, when you correctly refer to the eye level that flat earthers are talking about. So I'll just round this video off by saying thank you very much to Wolfie and Will Duffy for putting together a very professional looking production that puts Wolfie across in a very authoritative light. But hopefully you can see now that despite one's credentials or experience or their academic qualifications or ability to do mathematics and work things out on a map, that doesn't dictate that you see anything related to the Earth being a globe. You've just adopted this way of perceiving it, and my job, as far as I'm concerned, is to help people understand and see the difference between what is reality and what is conceptualized, and understand how our perception can change depending on what we assume or do not assume in the first place. So we can assume that the Earth is as it is presented to us and as we experience it. It's level and stationary, and it's not necessarily flying through space. And navigation is done primarily from what we've ascertained from observations in the sky to create a dome of perspective, or domes of perspective, and hemispheres. So the globe model is just that. It's just a model of perspective taken from a level Earth, and all the measurements done on a level Earth show us that it's level. There is no change. It doesn't matter how you argue against that with concepts, which we will look into in another video. So do subscribe and like and share this one so that you get notified of the next one, when we'll discuss another aspect of this chat that Will Duffy had with Wolfie. Because in my mind, it's great to actually study what's really going on in terms of the psychology of it, and when we're talking about beliefs and models and things like that. So again, just to be very, very clear, this particular flat earther, if you want to give me that label, just goes with what we experience and can measure in reality. And if you cannot measure any curvature, and you cannot see any curvature, and if you're going to misrepresent certain things to try and claim evidence of curvature, then really that just shows us that you're trying to defend a belief that doesn't fit with reality. Again, Will Duffy loves to talk about making predictions. The globe predicts this, the globe predicts that, and the flat Earth, or in his mind the azimuthal equidistant map, can't make the same predictions, which is a ridiculous straw man argument. Nothing changes. Okay, let's just be really clear about that. What we see is the same. It just depends how we perceive what's actually being presented to us. And if there are no models involved, we can just take reality as it is to us and not have to make any assumptions about what's going on outside of this realm, which we've never seen anyway. We've only ever imagined. And so that's why people are stuck on this globe concept. And when you talk about flat Earth, it doesn't mean that you jump into this different belief of an Earth based on any kind of map projection or any kind of model with a dome or whatever. All of that is completely open to interpretation, and that's all anyone has ever had, is interpretations and analogies and assumptions and calculations. What we want, and what I would happily accept from someone like Wolfie or Will Duffy, is an actual measurement of curvature. This was pointed out before Will Duffy went off to Antarctica and then put up that straw man argument that the flat earthers believe in this azimuthal map projection. No, and that was pointed out beforehand. If you want to prove anything to flat earthers, stop pointing at the sky and start measuring the surface, and actually show a measurement of the curvature rather than making up explanations and quite frankly using deceptive techniques to try and make a point to prove or win some kind of imaginary argument. Because this isn't a debate really about any models, it's about just discerning between reality and beliefs. So let's look at more of that video in future videos, and I hope you come back and look forward to what you've got to add to the discussion as well. Thank you very much.